I'm Mike Thornton, and this is Public Process. We are joined in the studio by Andrea Lanctot of BHC, Building Healthy Communities. And should I just call you Drea?
Yeah,
okay.
That'd be great.
All right. We'll be a little less formal. Drea does a lot of work related to youth and youth activities in our community, and it's one of the things, Drea. It's near and dear to my heart. We know each other, and we've worked together and worked on projects together. And, I was one of those kids. And so it's just incredibly important that there are people doing the kind of work that you and others are doing in this community. So Drea, one of the things about Public Process is we want to talk about what people are doing, but I also want to know about who people are, So, who are you,
All right. Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're
Grateful
welcome.
to be here. Like I said, my name is Andrea Lanctot. I go by Drea. And I grew up in Rhode Island, actually. Lived there till I was about 22. And growing up, I had a single mom, divorced parents, and my mom was a high school dropout. And when my parents got divorced, she had to figure out how to take care of us. So she got her GED and put herself through school and became a nurse and was working a lot. And so I was kind of one of those latchkey kids. I came home from school and she was leaving for work, and I spent a lot of time alone. And through that process, I never had anyone show me what options were out there, how to apply to school, how to get anywhere. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this work is I want to kind of give back to kids and youth and young adults some of the stuff that I didn't get that I feel like maybe would have helped me along my pathway.
That's a really interesting thing. I do want to ask you about the long journey from Rhode Island to Del Norte County and Crescent City, but so I have this premise. A lot of times, and particularly when we're talking about adults, and most of my work has been with adults, some with young people, but mostly with adults. And we're often talking in terms of with this sort of frame of, rehabilitation. But I think one of the things that I just heard you say is a lot of young people, the young people that you're working with, have never had anybody show them how to do any of this stuff in the first place. So there's nothing to go back to. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, and to be honest, when I look back at my life, my parents didn't know.
Right, well, mine didn't either,
so they can only teach you what they know. And so, no one's showing these kids what options they have and how to get there. There's not meaningful mentorship. The adults are busy, preoccupied. Their families are dealing with personal struggles, poverty, putting food on the table. So I think part of my work and what I want to do is show them that there's options, but also that there's people that care and there's people here to help them.
We're speaking with Andrea Lanctot of BHC about youth activities, youth work, and issues that youth are facing in our community. So, Andrea, one of the things that I come across with, and I think a lot of times it's with a lot of people who happen to be older, like I am, and, well, they should just do this, or they should just do that, or it's a different world now than it was then. Isn't it?
It's a completely different world. For my generation, I have a lot of my peers that have gone through college and have been working for the past 10 years, and we can't buy houses, we can't buy land, we're paying off school debt, we're dealing with climate change, changing economics, inequality. So we're kind of a little bit lost, and we're not living that same dream that maybe a couple generations ago, if you just work hard, then you can make it.
Yeah, and
we're working really hard,
right,
and we're not making it.
Right, yeah. And then, I think particularly in an area, and please, if I'm wrong on this, please tell me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Particularly in an area like Del Norte, where the opportunities even for the people who are most able to take advantage of them, are limited, in my opinion. And then we also have multiple generations of trauma as well that the young people in our community are attempting to navigate and work their way through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's all the things that we're struggling with right now. But I think while there's this narrative that there aren't a lot of options and opportunity, I also think that there's some falseness to that, because I'm someone who's moved to Del Norte and found a great job and great community to live in. I have met many people over the past 8 months since I've been here who have moved up to Del Norte because of the beauty here and because of job opportunities. So part of what we are trying to do is take youth and connect them to local businesses, local organizations, local mentors, and show them that if they do want to stay in Del Norte, there is a pathway for them, and they might not realize that.
Well, that's really interesting, because Paul and I were at the recent economic summit, and Paul put together a very good piece on that. If you haven't heard it, I encourage you to check it out on KFUG's website. And one of the things that got raised was that there is a bit of a kind of a poverty less than mentality in this community that's related in some ways to the collapse of the resource industry and all of that. And so, I mean, well, I guess there are some actual limitations. They're not necessarily as much as some of us tend to focus on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree, actually. So, I didn't give you the full history of being here, but I lived in Humboldt for 14 years, both in Eastern Humboldt and on the coast, and moved up here to Del Norte June of last year. And so I've traveled pretty extensively through this region, both rural and in the towns, and there are actually lots of job opportunities. I know the Yurok tribe has probably a list of 20 positions that they have, anywhere from doing forestry and water quality work to working with youth to teaching to healthcare. Here there's jobs with several nonprofits, school districts, home health aides. So there's opportunity. We just need to stop thinking that there isn't, and that we are poor and there's no choices and we're stuck.
Putting those unnecessary self-limitations on ourselves and our community, and then transmitting that message to our young people, creating hopelessness in them.
Yeah, and I also don't want to focus on, hey, there's just this pathway with the school district or the tribe, but there's lots of space for innovation and for us to come up with products, services, businesses that could help this community thrive and both provide something for the people and also provide something for maybe tourists who want to come through. But there's lots of opportunity, and I think that if we can take the time to dream and support those youth and support those people who have ideas, then we can really flourish.
We're speaking with Andrea Lanctot of BHC, Building Healthy Communities. This is Public Process. I'm Mike Thornton, KFUG Crescent City. 15 minutes past the hour. That hour is noon here on the northernmost part of the north coast of California. So, Andrea, you raised another thing, and it just keeps taking me in these other directions, which is, don't get me wrong, I'm really happy about that. Another thing that was being discussed with Paul and I was this issue of a thriving community, right? And that a thriving community may actually not necessarily always go hand in hand with a thriving economy. And what I mean by that is, one is an emphasis on money and taking money out of one pocket and putting it in another, but a thriving community is more than that. When you're looking at working with young people in our community, How do you think of it in terms of creating a thriving community that they can flourish in? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you worded it and put it. For me, when I'm working with youth, specifically through the Youth Training Academy and our Youth Strategy Council, I want them to feel connected both to the landscape and the organizations, but also realize that they play a very important part in this community and that it's up to them to engage and find out what's going on and then participate in either making change, creating programs, creating businesses, telling the community and adults what they need and what they want, and then doing the work with support to make that happen. So I think it's about relationships, building relationships.
And I want to talk more about that and more about how to engage young people. Most adults think it's a challenge, and they think it's a challenge for different reasons. I think it can be challenging for different reasons, sometimes different reasons than some of us think about. But I want to get back to, you were in Rhode Island, and somehow or another you wound up here, and then you were in Humboldt for quite some time. How did Drea get from Rhode Island to Humboldt? What were you doing in Humboldt? Because I know you were doing good work there as well. So
yeah. So ironically enough, when I was in high school, I did a college survey, and it was this long half-hour survey where you had to answer probably over 100 questions, and it would match you up with schools that fit. And only 2 schools came out, and one was the University of Vermont, and the other was Humboldt State University. And I had never heard of Humboldt, had no idea where it was, so I looked it up and started looking at it, and I was like, what? Like oceans, redwoods, rivers. At the time, I thought I was going to go to school for botany. They had an amazing botany program, and I just decided, sight unseen, I'm going to Humboldt State. I did apply, and I didn't get financial aid, and I didn't have the money, and so it kind of got put on the back burner. I went to community college. I worked at a marina for 7 years, but I never stopped thinking, I'm going to California, and I'm going to Humboldt State. And so what happened was I learned about the Student Conservation Association, which is a program that's similar to AmeriCorps. They place youth in like conservation jobs across the country, and I applied to all the jobs in California because my plan was I want to get to California, establish residency, and go to school. And so I got this amazing job actually working for the Park Service on a 10-month stint where we traveled to a different national park every month and mapped and removed invasive plants. And it was incredible. I got to see all of California and live in these national parks for a month. And so after that, I moved up to Humboldt and went to Humboldt State. So I went to Humboldt State for 4 years. And while I was there, I both worked and was a co-director at the Campus Center for Appropriate Technology. And that's a live-in demonstration house for sustainable living, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture. And that probably had the most effect on my life and where I am now and things that are important to me, and also informs the youth work that I do now, because that was a program where youth at Humboldt State said, we want to do something different. We want to model what it's like to have community, to care for the earth, to care for our economy, care for our people. And they convinced the school to let them take over a house and remodel it and build these systems. And so when I got to live and work there, it was so inspiring. We had 3 young directors with no experience running this program, 20 youth employees, and we were building things and events and workshops, and it was just, that was what really filled me up, and I saw what the power of people coming together around a shared vision and shared value could really accomplish.
We're speaking with Andrea Lanctot of BHC, and Andrea, let me ask you, is something like that happening in Del Norte?
Not fully that I know of. I mean, I think there is some undercurrents of that for sure with some of the food forests, some of the work that I think Dar Caldwell is doing at the Kids Garden, at the Family Resource Center. But like I said, I'm kind of new, so I'm just finding my way around, and I'm not sure.
Well, no, and I'm not either. And the reason I ask, I mean, it sounds like a really exciting thing. And I get it. You know, there's support from the university that makes things more practical. On some of you're looking at me as though
Well,
this was the look, Mike. You don't exactly know what you're talking about.
Well, to be honest, something that is incredible about CCAT, and it might be different. I've been probably out for about 10 years, but when I was a co-director, we did have an adult steering committee that we met with once a month, but we really were running the program and making decisions on our own, and that was what was amazing. Sorry, they're my pups with me here
That's
in the
okay.
studio.
You're being a protector dog. That's an important job. If there's noises, I must protect.
Julie
Good job.
just wanted to get a little radio time.
That's
All
okay.
right.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that, maybe a different way of saying it would be if this was connected to the university or done somehow under the auspices of the university. I could see where that provides a framework that may make it easier in some ways. But it also sounds like something that maybe, College of the Redwoods could be doing or something, because it sounds like a very exciting program that, perhaps could and should be replicated in other communities.
Yeah, absolutely. It was life-changing for me. And actually, it's hard because I have never been able to fully relive that experience, to work for a couple years with a really strong, close-knit group of people that were really catalyzed over certain issues. I mean, that was amazing and filled me up, and I think I'm searching for that Shangri-La again.
I think we're all searching for that in one way or another. We're talking with Andrea Lanctot of Building Healthy Communities. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. Did you do food work in tribal lands?
I did, yeah. So after I left HSU, I worked on several farms. Then I went out to Eastern Humboldt. I lived at a place called Sandy Bar Ranch, where I helped put together permaculture workshops and classes. And then from there, I worked for the University of California Cooperative Extension Humboldt under the federally recognized Tribes Extension Program. So that was extending cooperative extension services to the tribes, and I ended up working with youth during that, and primarily we were helping get school and community gardens up and running, and also doing some stuff around nutrition and food security and also traditional food sources. So I was working at gardens in Klamath at Margaret Keating, Jack Norton and Pequon, Wichipec Elementary, a couple things in Hoopa, and then out in Orleans at Orleans Elementary.
Can you talk a little bit about what it's like working on tribal lands and working on things like you were working with? I've had some experience with that, but it's an incredibly interesting and challenging environment to work in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My heart really is in Eastern Humboldt. I lived on the Klamath River for multiple years and have worked out there. And so Wichipec and Pequon is absolutely beautiful country. The community there is very vibrant, but they're dealing with a lot of struggles. A lot of people don't know that they didn't have power in Eastern Humboldt. Jack Norton, the school out there, ran on a generator. Their water systems are failing. They're very old water systems that are coming from springs. The lack of access to a grocery store. For a while, there was a grocery store in Hoopa, and that was closed for a really long time, so they had to drive at least 45 minutes to Willow Creek, and that's still pretty expensive, drive all the way to the coast. Thankfully, now the grocery store just recently opened back up in Hoopa. But yeah, they are dealing with some almost third world infrastructure resources and access to resources. As well, the families are dealing with generational trauma. A lot of the kids are living with single parents, no parents, grandparents, and very, very isolated. So during that experience, I also was coming in from the outside, even though I had lived there. And it took a lot of time for me to build relationships and build trust. And which is completely understandable, because I think a lot of times state, county, city agencies get money or grants and come in and say, we're here to help you.
Right.
Which, yeah, right, based on some of the experiences they had. But then also I think they come in and they don't have the relationships, they don't have the connections, they don't understand what it means to work out there. And some of those programs fail, or they start the work and they leave. And so one of the biggest struggles, I think, is to continue to show up and to listen to what they need and then to follow through.
This is going to be a big statement, and I'm willing to, back off of it. I'm willing to at some point say, you know what, Mike, you didn't know what you were talking about. But so here's what I'm thinking. We're seeing, in my opinion, a huge disinvestment in rural America in general.
Yes.
And so many communities, and I'm specifically speaking of non-tribal, communities, not reservations, are seeing this disinvestment happen and experiencing all of the things that go with that. And then in some cases, that is, maybe 10 or 100 or 1,000-fold in some of the tribal communities, because they have been maybe perhaps never invested in, and have been experiencing disinvestment, for lack of a better word, for decades. And so I think a lot of people don't realize the struggles that some of our Native brothers and sisters face. But we're learning about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, so me and Menglo from Redwood Voice recently teamed up with KHSU and KIDE, and we helped run a youth media workshop at Captain John, which is the continuation school in Hoopa. And it was a 4-day workshop. We went out there and stayed for the 4 days. And at that time we were getting crazy weather and snow, and they lost power, and we just worked around it. But one of the things they said at the end was so many people come out and say they want to help or they want to do something, and then they don't follow through. They don't show up because the roads, there's landslides, communication, all this stuff. And they just said, thank you for actually following through. And I heard that time and time again when I was working a couple years ago for UC, that people don't follow through. It's kind of unseen, out of mind. And those roads and the distance and the conditions are kind of extreme, and people aren't used to dealing with that. So
we're talking with Andrea Lanctot of Building Healthy Communities. And so, Andrea, once again, this is me saying this is not you saying it. I was in Guatemala, right? And I was in this town, Rabinal. And so, there were people there. We were talking to them about the struggles they were facing, and they were really hostile and really angry. Wow, and I was there tagging along with the group. I was a journalist tagging along with another group, and wow, why are you so angry, right? And they're so angry. It's because, and this was what they said. It's like, people come here and to kind of it's like a poverty tour, right? It's like people come, all these do-gooders, they come and, they go, oh, this is really horrible, da-da-da-da-da, and then they go away. But nobody does anything, to actually help. And I guess what I'm saying is I think it's possible that there can be a similar sort of perspective in some of our tribal communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the reasons I took this job. I was living in Eastern Humboldt in Orleans, working at a plant nursery, which is near and dear to my heart. And I saw this job, which is with Building Healthy Communities as youth leadership facilitator, which covers all of Del Norte and tribal lands, so includes up to Eastern Humboldt and the Eastern Yurok Reservation. And I saw an opportunity for me to basically be able to funnel resources to those outstretches that aren't getting reached, that often go missed because it is so far. I mean, for me to drive to Wichita is over Bald Hills Road and is 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get out there, and to the furthest site is 3. So, and then I just wanted to comment on your remark about the deinvestment in rural communities, and we are also seeing that and fighting for that. BHC is one of 14 communities in California that received this grant, and so we often go to conferences and workshops with other BHC sites, and we're often the only rural and tribal site present. We are the only rural tribal site in the BHC network, but also on other tables, we're often the only rural tribal site, and it's really hard for us to compete for resources and grant funding and interest when there's a city that says, oh, if you give us this money, we're reaching 10,000 youth.
Right.
If I'm working in Wichita, I'm maybe reaching 50 youth.
But 50 youth who really, really need it. And that's not to say other youth don't.
Right, and I think if we can reach those 50 youth, imagine we can change a whole community because we can reach all the youth in that community. Right. So it does have a larger impact.
So I have a really easy question for you before we talk about what you're actually doing with Youth Strategy Council and YTA. So you talked about building trust and building relationships. How do you do that?
I personally try my best.
How is that done? Might be a better way to say it.
Yeah, I can only speak to what I know,
of course,
and how I act, and so I try to listen as much as possible, and I also try to repeat back what I hear. When I was working for UC, I tried to go to other meetings and just listen and find out what they were working on and how I could support them, rather than me coming in and saying, how can you support me? And that's in all my work that I've done. I've always wanted to make sure that I'm doing the work of what the people want and not my own agenda. But it's as easy as what I was talking about before, saying you're going to be somewhere and showing up, but not just showing up, but being prepared and having put time and intention in, because that shows that you care, and then follow through and continuing to show up and follow through.
Right.
So it's building that trust, and that takes time, and not coming in and just expecting that people should just trust you because you're a good person and you're there to do good, but taking the time to actually get to that spot where they can trust you.
And recognizing that there may have been 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 other people who have shown up in the past going, I'm a good person and I'm here to help, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's been a hard lesson for me.
Yeah, no, me too. I believe me, I can relate. We're talking with Andrea Lanctot of Building Healthy Communities. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City 101.1 on your radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. This is Public Process. I'm your host, Mike Thornton. Okay, so now let's talk about what you're doing with BHC. So at least some of what you're doing, because I know you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
So two of the things that I know about, but let's start with the Youth Strategy Council.
Sure.
What is that about? How did it come about? And what are you working with some of the young people in our community to try to achieve?
All right. So the Youth Strategy Council is our youth council. It came out of YTA last year. So we've been meeting since August. We meet every week. It was more sporadic, but we've been meeting more and more. So we meet every week, Wednesdays from 2 to 3:20 at CR in room DM29. And youth 14 to 24 are welcome to join us. But currently what we're working on is a mental health awareness campaign. And we're really focusing on what mental health resources are available to youth. What are the stigma around mental health? What's preventing youth from accessing those resources? What are some of the things they're struggling with, and what supports do they actually need, and what might we be able to help them with? So it's taken a while for us to get around our issue. We're going to May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we are going to be working on a small video, and then over April and May, we're going to be taking a survey. We've been creating questions with the youth in the council, and we're going to go out and ask as many youth as we can, what are they struggling with and what supports do they need? And really what we're hoping to get from that is to then bring that to the school district, the county, and say, hey, it's our community's responsibility for the social and emotional well-being of our children, and this is what we need, whether it's curriculum K through 12 that's integrated, whether it's peer counseling, access to resources, restorative justice practices. So this is kind of just the beginning, and we're really excited. And what we've found in the past year that I've been working is that this is an issue that keeps coming up.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, and thank you for saying it, is that in the time that I've been here, the issues of mental health and services, particularly related to young people, keeps coming up over and over and over. And then as I was listening to your talk, just so I'm clear, the Youth Strategy Council came out of the previous Youth Training Academy, and so what has happened is this group of young people, with assistance from you and others, they are the ones who have created this, are creating this campaign, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, in addition to hopefully addressing the actual issues related to mental health and youth in our community, the working together and the creating the campaign also has benefits for the young people who are involved in it.
Absolutely. I think them just going out and talking to youth and finding out that their peers are all dealing with similar issues, that alone, I think, will be healing. But also them looking at, okay, what is causing this issue? What do we need? Who's the person who can make that decision? And then being able to create and ask those policymakers, system leaders for that change is gonna be monumental. And that's really what we need right now across the world, is people standing up and saying, this is what we need, and we're gonna fight for it.
Yeah, and particularly young people, I think, and I know this is a discussion I've had with others and with you as well. I come out of an organizing background that has really been based on, organizing for concrete political, economic, and social gain. It's like you're organizing for power. And youth organizing can do that, but also is a tool for what I refer to as social emotional development, because by engaging in those types of activities, youth can learn things about themselves and their community and develop skills and abilities and broadening their perspectives that will not only help them to organize the specific campaign, but can also help them in achieving other life goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of one of the main goals of the Youth Training Academy, which is a career exploration program. It's not job placement. It's really a chance for them to choose from 8 different pathways and learn about themselves. What interests them? What do they really like? And then what does this career mean? What are options in this career? What are things I could do? And then how do I get there? And that's all things that a lot of us don't get an opportunity to do as high schoolers, unless we have some really amazing parents or mentors or some teacher who takes us under their wing or a counselor. But the majority of us, let's be honest, fall through the cracks and just kind of figure it out willy-nilly.
Well, and that sort of gets us back to where we started in some ways, and also to another thing which I see a lot. It doesn't necessarily just happen here. It happens in a lot of places where, if you're lucky enough, to have that stable family, or you're lucky enough to come across that one good teacher or that one good school counselor, or maybe it's the maintenance person or whoever it is, if you're lucky enough to cross paths with that person, because so many things, particularly in resource and cash-strapped communities, are personality dependent. we've got the one great teacher. She's fantastic. Boy, oh boy, if you're in her class, man, you got it going on. You got somebody who cares about you, somebody that can help you with all of this stuff. But if you're not in her class, then you're out of luck. You know, and so it sounds like Youth Training Academy kind of can help provide some of those things.
Yeah, and really, I mean, it's twofold. I think that the Youth Training Academy and the Youth Strategy Council provide mentorship and some resources to the youth, but we all know that a lot of your life, there's relationships and support, but then you also need to make a lot of decisions for yourself. And part of that is knowing who you are and what you want. And so I think that the Youth Training Academy and Youth Strategy Council, my goal this year is to really put a lot of energy into giving the youth opportunities to find out what do they value, what are their interests, what are their passions, what is that like deep place in themselves in which they can then make decisions from. And I think that also can help with some of the anxiety and depression and loneliness that our youth and communities are feeling. They need to feel connected. They need to have meaning. They need to have purpose. And so let's start with that. Let's find out what our meaning and purpose is, what's really important to us. So we want to get up every day and go do that.
Well, and a sense of agency, of the ability that, you know, now, I mean, this is, you know, sounds a little bit, I don't know how it sounds, but I'll say it anyway. You know, now that I know who I am and what I want, now I actually have a sense that I can actually achieve those things, as compared to going, well, you know, I kind of know who I am and I kind of know what I want. And the one thing I know for sure is that I'll never be able to achieve it. And it's real. And I think in many ways that I've often said that the biggest campaign, once again, looking from an organizing for power perspective, is the raising of self-worth and self-dignity and dignity, because then people can start thinking, I actually deserve better than this, you know? And I think there's something similar going on related to Youth Training Academy, right?
Yeah, and some of the quotes that kind of stick out to me, we do like focus groups and a survey at the end and get feedback from the youth about the program and how it can be better. And in going through some of that stuff, some of the quotes that have stuck out to me, like from our early childhood education pathway, youth saying, oh, I didn't realize what some of the kids in this community are struggling with, like, you know, adverse childhood experiences, trauma, poverty. Now, like, this really makes me want to work in early childhood education and make a difference and learn about programs. There's other youth that said, oh, I don't feel like I had a voice. And after going through the media pathway, I realized I can tell my story and share it. As well, from the health career pathways, there was a quote that like they just didn't even realize how much beauty and opportunity was here in Del Norte. And after going through the program, they felt more connected to this place and more connected to the opportunities. So I think that we're making a difference. I hope so.
No, I think that you're making a difference as well. We're talking with Andrea Lanctot of Building Healthy Communities. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process on KFUG, Crescent City. So, Andrea, you're already in the process of planning and working to make the next Youth Training Academy the biggest and baddest and greatest ever in the whole history of the universe. Talk a little bit about the specifics of that, please.
Sure. Thanks for that opportunity. So we are already accepting applications for the Youth Training Academy. It happens at CR. This is our third year of partnering with College of the Redwoods Del Norte. All youth that participate become College of the Redwoods students. The program runs July 1st to August 8th, and it's Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's about 20 hours a week, and it's for ages 15 to 24. And it's open to all Del Norte and tribal land youth. Youth have a choice of 8 different pathways. So health careers, community organizing, early childhood education, regenerative agriculture, health and human services, ecotourism, new media, and social entrepreneurship. So applications are available online right now. All youth that go through the program earn a $500 stipend upon completion, and you can get more information about the program and access to the application at bit.ly/2019 YTA. You can also go to Wild Rivers Community Foundation page and click on Youth Training Academy.
And what we're going to do is we'll come back to those URLs in just a minute, because I know you're all rushing to get pencil and paper so you can write those down. So we're going to have Drea give those back to you in just a few minutes. So Drea, and this is out of the clear blue sky, and I know there's an effort to move forward and build up something called Redwood Voice. Yeah. That's coming out of Wild Rivers and out of building healthy communities. And I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I find it very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So Redwood Voice is our youth media arm. The focus of Redwood Voice is to change the narrative of youth here in Del Norte and tribal lands and give them a platform for their voice to be heard. Also to try to tell the untold stories of the youth at the margins. But we have recently also folded in our youth organizing arm into Redwood Voice. So, Elijah Brunson, who's our youth organizer, has been working with me with Youth Strategy Council. He's also going to Crescent Elk and Community Day. And what we're really hoping to do is reach youth where they're at, find out what's important to them, and teach them how to create campaigns, how to make change. And so we're really excited about teaming up both our youth media and our youth organizing under one umbrella.
Yeah, and at least my understanding, I'm not necessarily asking you to speak to this, but I mean, the Building Healthy Communities, the BHC program, project, whatever you want to call it, has been kind of in this 10-year window, which now is changing in 2020. And at least my understanding is that one of the major proposals for moving forward with this is to really sort of double down on youth organizing and youth narrative and that kind of thing. I mean, is that more or less it?
Yeah, as far as what I understand as a staff, but that is true. BHC, Building Healthy Communities Initiative, has been a 10-year initiative, and our funding will be coming to a close in 2020. And the California Endowment has supported us in Redwood Voice, and the hope is, and we don't know yet, but the hope is that, as we move forward, BHC 2.0 will really be focused, at least a part of it, on youth organizing and youth voice. And we're also right now trying to extend our programs to Eastern Humboldt and the Yurok Reservation and to get further. So something that I've been working on the past 6 months is to take YTA, our Youth Training Academy, and make a version upriver at the CR Hoopa site. And that program that I'm working with Priscilla Kenny from True North is called Think Village. And so we're really trying to create a program where youth in the Klamath Trinity region, we're building pathways that community really needs to build a vibrant, healthy community and village.
That's excellent. We're speaking with Andrea Lanctot of BHC, Building Healthy Communities. This is KFUG's Public Process. So, Andrea, we're working our way towards the end of today's program, and we've got time. So what I want to hopefully have is a bit of a conversation, if we can. Everybody asks, at some point every interviewer asks, well, what can people do to help, right? And what can this community really do to help its youth? I mean, I think there's a whole range of things. And from your perspective, as somebody who is working with the young people of our community on a daily basis, what can the rest of us be doing, from from the guy who does a radio show on KFUG to the person who works at a local business to the people who are teaching and administrating in our schools, to our law enforcement, to our healthcare community, to our elected officials. What are the things that we could and should be doing to help create that thriving community and place of opportunity for our young people?
They say it takes a village, right?
Well, they do say that, and I believe it's true.
It is true. So what I hear time and time again from the youth I'm working with is the lack of mentorship, but like more specifically, the lack of just one adult that they can trust, build a relationship with, and that is continuous, like continues to go on. So if you're in the community and you want to help, bring a youth on as an intern, have events that are youth focused, reach out to me, come speak at the Youth Training Academy and talk about your career and how you got there. Come to our youth strategy councils and get involved in our campaign. Connect with the youth. And I've also had youth say, even if I push you away, keep coming back. So don't get discouraged, especially teenagers as they're going through and struggling what they're struggling with. It's that goes right back to that relationship building. You have to keep showing up consistently and build that trust, and then they'll open up and flower.
Yeah, well, and that issue of keep showing up, even if I push you away. I mean, part of the thing is that very often, and not just young people, but people, particularly people who have been traumatized, it's like, I don't feel safe. You have to prove to me that I can feel safe around you, and part of that is this testing that goes on that the person may or may not consciously realize that they're doing, but it's really important to keep suiting up and showing up and making an effort to be that stable, predictable force in a young person's life.
And if you sit on a board, if you have a business, an organization, invite youth in. Ask them questions. Ask what they're interested in. Ask what's important to them. Because I think most youth think that adults don't care or that they know better. And I think that we have a lot to learn from them. I'm learning from the youth I work from every day.
We've been speaking with Andrea Lanctot of Building Healthy Communities. Andrea, I just want to say first off, thank you so much for being on the program today. I really appreciate it. And also, if people want to get more information, the website URLs again about YTA, and then also if they want to get more information about the work that you're doing other than that.
Sure. The best site to go to where you can get all the information about Wild Rivers Community Foundation and the Building Healthy Communities Initiative and link to the Youth Training Academy is wildrivers.org. That's our website, wildriverscf.org.
Okay.
Sorry for that correction. And then if you want to just go directly to the Youth Training Academy, that short bit.ly that we put together is bit.ly/2019 YTA.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I had some technical difficulties on my end as well. So, Andrea Lanctot, BHC, Building Healthy Communities, thank you for being with us on Public Process today. Really appreciate it. Look forward to all the work you're doing and having you back on the show again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cool.